Good evening. Good evening, folks. This is Connor, Pittsburgh. Welcome to the stream. This is my drawing desk. I've been drawing on and off all day with pretty good results, I think. These are all views into this sort of factory floor space that these Newts are building, which I'm calling Newtopia, which is a funny pun. This is a quayside where broken pieces of pottery are. This is where that pottery gets forged in these kilns. This is a boat that carries it downriver like a barge. And those barges go along this raised channel over this swampier part of the factory floor. And this is some sort of pentagonal flamingo with, like a tentacle beak. Because that's a little disturbing. And slightly alien biology is an integral part of a high magical fantasy setting, so you love to see it, yeah. Let me just take the time right now. Seems like no one's actually watching, according to the little concurrent views number right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the time to inform others that I'm doing this stream. Just, typing stuff in to some chat channels. Okay, I consider that word sufficiently spread. Let's go ahead and get to work drawing stuff. So, what do I got going on? Well, the sort of images that you have been viewing here are indeed all based on imagery that is photographs that I took. Oh yeah, this was leaving Pittsburgh, but arriving in California, and I was in California for 2.5 weeks. Kind of like, I got back to Pittsburgh, and about a week later, lockdown started in Pittsburgh. It had already started in the Bay Area. It actually, when my plane left San Francisco, they had not announced, Gavin Newsom had not announced the Bay Area lockdown. But by the time the plane had landed 5 hours later, because it was a direct flight, so there was no stopping and getting new news. And I didn't pay for in-flight Wi-Fi because that seems like, I kind of treasure the internetless time in an age that is always with internet, and I try to actually read books on airplanes because that's like some dedicated book reading time and book reading space where the internet just isn't great. No, I didn't pay for the Wi-Fi, so when we landed, I was like, oh, we were like the last flight out. We were not the last flight out, but we were certainly a last flight out under one definition of last, and one definition of flight, and one definition of out. We were among many final flights before everything really ground to a halt. Right, but before that, the 2.5 weeks prior to that, I was in California this whole time, and I forget how to make this full screen. It is full screen, but how do I hide the toolbar? There we go. Okay, great. I spent 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks in California, took all kinds of photographs. So these photographs are those, and this um, art is all kind of from that. Wow, okay. This is like a big page. Jeez. Yeah, so this pottery is that pottery. Lizard. Lizard. And let's zoom in on the lizard. This is a western fence lizard. These guys are adorable. And they just skitter around. This was taken at the Stanford Foothills by the Dish, which is this kind of spooky radio transmission dish that's built up on top of the hill. This is an old electrical utility box, junction box, with a really ancient kind of like lighting flame torch Art Deco thing. It's really nice. And so I imagined that these kilns that make these, in which you bake these giant ceramic pots, might be kind of shaped like these junction boxes. And so that one's open, and the rest of these are kind of closed and smoking up into the rafters. And they're great for growing these super giant succulent plants. And it's a little bit hard to like see the influence, but maybe not. But this guy, I kind of looked at that particular kind of succulent or very dry flower and imagined what it was like if it was a bird beak, and then kind of drew what I saw. I mean, I kept the flamingo beak, but I did add kind of 5 petals of beak, the way that these flowers have 5 petals in the sort of star of big petals, and then they have 5 smaller petals going out, which I put as kind of sensory feathers, maybe. Maybe these are ancillary tentacles, or maybe it's a messy eater. Maybe it does sort of filtration, right? It sort of sucks stuff up with this beak, and then puts the tentacles down and sprays all the stuff back out, but filters the brine into the tentacles. It could do something complicated and weird like that. And I like drawing these kind of big creatures because they presuppose just such a vast environment, and that this creature dwarfs the newts, or salamanders, and is at scale with the salamander infrastructure, and all of that is inside of this sort of giant cavernous factory floor space, which is just like a big grid, a big battle grid. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting notion to try to capture. This is another way I tried to capture it. Some say this rock that forms our vast circular factory temple capital is not rock at all, but wood, the metal weft of some dry, still-blown macrolept, like a eucalypt, but big. Those that subscribe to this ancient botany hypothesis call the geological isolate. That's kind of a more generalized neutral term for the big plateau that has the factory floor underneath it, that's circular, that's the old cone of a super mountain, super volcano, which now has a smaller mini volcano in the center, which I didn't picture here because I wanted to focus on that stump. And then I wanted to draw the idea of how vast this tree would be in the landscape, and so these poppies have a scale relative to the tree that you can see in the background here that implies that that's a pretty big tree, and these are pretty small poppies, and we're up close. So these poppies are huge compared to the mountains they grow on and the small trees that dot those mountains in this forest, and the this is a whole farm, right? This is 4 different fields and a couple outbuildings and a bridge over the creek and a road. And behind all that in the far distance, right, that's a macro ledge, right? Like, what a giant tree that must be. It probably causes its own gravity. It's so massive. Things will lean towards it in their bulk. And then I thought about kind of a honeybee hive game, which I won't show here, and now we are on to what we're going to focus on. So the music you hear in the background is the Celtic channel, which I'm realizing now. Let's see if I can get to... Oh, no. Alright, it's Command-Shift-F is the magic button. I'm realizing that there's a fair amount of Celtic that's, well, like weird electronic, which we don't need. Like video game battle music, which is a little too much for me. So what do we got here? Oh, no, wrong window. What we got here is a live oak, California live oak, I believe they're called. They have this really interesting kind of dry bark exterior, and it's funny, they always seem like they're super dead because they'll kind of hollow out and fall over, but then they'll just keep growing. And then they also support just a massive amount of epiphytes. Epiphytes being, well, they're not quite parasitic, but they're plants that grow on other plants. They don't need soil, they kind of make their own soil in the outer bark of the plant that they're living on. And so this oak has this really pleasing kind of epiphyte nature that I wanted to capture. And so we can spend this time... Is this the pen I want to use? No. This is the pen I want to use. Oh, I'm not vibing with this. Shift F. Yeah, let's just skip this whole artist. Thus is the beauty and the peril of being free music archive. You get what you get, and you don't get upset. You just hit fast forward. Yes. Right. First thing, starting a new page. At least get the day down, right? It is Wednesday. It is Wednesday, my dudes. Whoa, I haven't thought about the Wednesday frog in quite some time. The Wednesday frog is a pretty amazing meme, I guess you would call it. Kind of YouTube phenomenon. But it's one of these sort of big human mouth looking frogs that's got just like a vast wide mouth that's sort of upsetting, and it kind of comes down into frame and just speaks with a human tongue and human teeth, and it's really sort of, or maybe not even, maybe it just has like its wide mouth open, but it just goes, "It is Wednesday, my dudes," and that frog's incredible. There's so much amazing kind of like techno music. There's a lot of great music, a lot of great funny jokes, a lot of good comedy has come out of the "It is Wednesday, my dudes" frog. I had completely forgotten about that. That was the thing in a house I used to live in with a particular set of housemates. Every Wednesday, we would all kind of trade that, trade esoteric versions of that. It is Wednesday, my dudes. Meme back and forth with each other. Right, so if you haven't quite picked up where we are vis-a-vis what I'm drawing versus what's down in the corner there, I am drawing the bark here, this knot that comes out. This is the big carpet of epiphytes, and we haven't even gotten to, but I am going to just rough in now. One thing I really appreciate about this bark is that up close, it almost has a geology to it. It's very much, it breaks and has layers and has canyons that resemble I guess water carved landscapes. And because there's a grain to the bark, I mean the whole tree has a grain, but because the bark has a structure, which is that trees grow from the top for the most part. I think always actually trees grow from the top, and so what'll happen in the trunk is that it'll just swell, and depending on what kind of bark and how after you have the sort of hardy meat of the trunk that's the dense wood that's growing in a ring every year, there's an outer layer of kind of transitional, I think it's called xylem material, and then the bark. And depending on how that's structured in terms of like, is this soft bark that peels away and then new bark forms underneath it and it's just like an onion that is self-renewing, or does it make these big icebergs that kind of split from each other and form these fissures that take you all the way like that ends up being the dominant feature of this bark, is that it splits, it makes these huge fissures, and you get this up and down gradient. And then you also get what's happening with the side-to-side gradient is that as the trunk grows bigger year after year, it's that growth, it's that aging combined with the kind of crystallization and hardening of the bark into structures that causes that cracking to occur. Because if the bark had a different material quality, it would break in a different way. It might not crack with such deep fissures. It might not have such a regular kind of 2-inch wide pattern of where the cracks come out and at what age and dimension they come out. But we get the benefit of being witness to the outcome of this system, and each individual specimen of oak that you pass has its own life story and has a bark pattern and a wear pattern and a weathering to it that is totally unique and totally it will not be seen again. You know, it might, something very similar might be seen, and you can measure qualities about the bark that you're looking at. Now I'm kind of freestyling because this is below where the carpet ends, and so I'm kind of making up what this bark material looks like, which is bad on me. But I think that the mission has been accomplished. Yeah. But these icebergs of bark are so fun to draw. They end up each being these little graphical puzzles. Yeah, I hope you guys like bagpipes, because we're in for bagpipe mode. Ride or die for them bagpipes. It is Wednesday, my dudes. Oh, that was such a good meme. Such a good meme. And it is Wednesday. And this, I got a lot of drawing done today, and so this, we're not doing production here. This is just sketchbook sketching. This is just testing things out, trying new things, drawing new stuff, seeing what's what, you know, just, taking our imaginations out for a test drive, you know, seeing what we can capture with our eyeballs. Alright. I feel like this has been a good thought about how to draw this. I guess the way that it would change for the Newt world is just that there'd be some shelf mushrooms here. Kind of intruding, which is fine, because that's where the buildings, such as the granary, and the barn. Yeah, how cool is that, right? This is like a whole little, now this is like a pasture. So we'll call this the Epiphyte Farm. I'm gonna make sure I spell epiphyte right. And I'm liking the kind of pastoral epiphyte, a plant that grows on another plant but is not parasitic, such as the numerous ferns, bromeliads, air plants, and orchids growing on the tree trunks in tropical rainforests. Great, that is what we got going on. Or this is an epiphyte, so we'll call this like the epiphyte. Let's call it the Epiphyte Highlands. the right. And epiphyte, epi means in addition, phyte means plant. So an epiphyte is like an additional plant on top of a regular plant. So that's what we got on. We got going on. The epiphyte fields of the. And I'm going to make sure that these are California live oaks that we're talking about. That this is the right kind of tree. Talking about them California live oaks. Yeah, we are absolutely. It's the same kind of bark. Yeah, this is the stuff. That's what I drew. California live oak. The epiphyte fields of the live oak highlands are a dangerous and worthy climb. Whoa, okay, yeah, this is a little bit too, mid-air machines, remember the way, 1, 2, 3, and 4/4. Castle rent, medieval, castle gestures, modern Renaissance music. Alright, yeah, no, we're skipping all of that. Absolutely sounded a little bit too much like a Ren Fair, and not enough like an entire island nation oppressed by the Ren Fair people. Okay, sounds good. Hey, there's some epiphytic structures. Look at these guys. Yeah, I like those. And so what we'll do is we'll just bring some of these into the front here. And what I want to do here is play with a slightly different style. A style that I started with this field, which is to give it no texture at all, right? To just do outlines and see how far I can get on just doing a careful selection of outlining subcomponents. Being very deliberate in this case about if I take a particular subcomponent and draw it as its own subcomponent, that added set of complex lines and sublines, making the whole thing a little bit darker and adding some value or some value to that section of the drawing. Value in the form of complex detail rather than ink or watercolor. Yeah, I think value in complex detail might be my general mantra. Value. Value achieved by intense detail. Alright, so I'm switching to a different technique to try to capture the little green coral guys that are growing. Right, so this is awesome, right? You can see that there's actually a couple of different kinds of epiphytes, some of which might be parasites, some of which might be epiphytes, but there's a couple of different kinds of plants and lichens and organisms growing on top of this plant. And this is just the end of the end of the end of a branch. I grew up around these oaks and used to walk here all when I was a kid and a teenager. I'd take high school friends out on walks here and walk here with my family. I feel like there were a couple of school field trips and kind of weird big community events that pretty much like the whole school, you got like physical education credit for going to this free public walking event, that kind of thing, that would get people out into the foothills, and myself included and my family included. That was the local park to go to. Was this land that was part of the massive amount of land that Leland Stanford owned when Stanford was formed as a university. I think either after his death or I'm not sure of the timeline, whether it was like whether like Carnegie he was around for setting up the university that was given his name, or whether it was totally posthumous. But I do remember the name Leland Stanford sticks out as the patriarch, the founder of the feast, as it were. Things get horrendously complex up here. That's alright. Starting to lose the train a little bit, but we're back into the little coral guys here. Right, so the foothills are still open space, and I think in order to maintain that open space as nominally private, it does have gates and hours, and it is minded the way that in a way that like many public parks are not minded, and many state forests are not minded, which is just like, well, if you want to go to the forest, man, like no one's gonna stop you. Like, it's a forest, go nuts. So here, kind of going beyond detail, just doing rough outlines of structures and textures to imply there's more stuff that happens behind here. And we are less interested in it. It's not for us, it's a little out of focus. Now, of course, final work, you'd go back in and you would finish this all out. This would just be the blocking for an effort that got you out to the edges of the page and done, you know. And we're just gonna skip all that because I just my aim here tonight with you guys is to listen to this cool Celtic music and to review these photos from my vacation and kind of remember what was inspiring about all these places. Oh yeah, this was a cattle egret in flight. What an awkward flight maneuver. But yeah, let's go ahead and draw that. I'm glad I was able to capture this photo. And I remember going to a house party, a New Year's Eve party, an old classmate of my mother's. My mom went to Vassar in the 60s, so she's got a sort of wide and illustrious and strange set of classmates, which is neat. It's a really, it's a great coven to grow up around, I guess I would say. And when I was 19 or 20, I went to this party over in the East Bay. This house that had it was, I guess, on the bay, or on a little marina just adjacent to the bay. But my mom's friend, my mom's classmate, had taken up wildlife photography because she could just sit with a DSLR on her back porch and, you know, 1,000 migratory species would fly past and land a couple feet away from where she was, and then she'd take amazing photographs of them. I mean, she took like bad photographs at the beginning, but she was like a project manager for 50 years in a professional capacity and ran like millions of dollars worth of important business successfully, and retired successfully, and like married well, and so yeah, she definitely in her retirement had the privilege to get up to speed on photography very fast, and I'm just this bad photograph that I took with a phone camera because I lost my DSLR camera about a year ago on a road trip. I think someone just like walked up to my truck and I had not locked the passenger door for some dumb reason, and they just nabbed it. But that's bad on me. That's my loss and my burden to carry. Though I guess I could probably get a pretty good DSLR camera on the cheap if I wanted to. But I got this great picture of this cattle egret. I mean, it's a bad picture of a cattle egret, but I did take a photo of a bird that I haven't seen before, and that's pretty cool. And it was in flight, and that's even cooler. And I don't think it really needs to change at all to be part of the Newt world, except to maybe have a little spectator hanging out. Yeah. Cool. this is all cliff face. Well, I don't have to color it in like this, but I'm going to. Shade it in, shade it in. I'll color it. Cattle egrets. Is there anything to say about these cattle egrets? I don't know. I don't know that a narrative structure has emerged related to these until I look at the next couple photos. Okay. These were these two really big eucalyptus trees. But it's impossible to really... I mean, these guys are like 90 feet high. It's really hard to kind of... There's nothing in here that really gives you the sense of scale because they're... This is a 45-foot wide road, maybe 50-foot wide road. So I don't know if you can see the difference between this fence post and that fence post, but like... these were big trees. This one especially. With more big trees behind them. The eucalyptus just has like... well, I was able to see a grove of eucalyptus at UC Berkeley a couple weeks later. I think that there's a photo in here of that. Right. KateraProblems.com, Katera under investigation, federal government for violating workers' rights. This was on Sand Hill Road, 2400 Rogers Sand Hill Road. Sand Hill Road is like the venture capital road in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area. It's just lined with venture capital firms, except for the part of it that's lined with the offices of the Stanford Linear Accelerator, which is a 2-mile-long particle smashing building. Well, it's a 2-mile-long building that has a 2-mile-long particle smasher in it. San Francisco. Oh, right, perfect. I loved these. So, what I liked here in this photo, where are we? We're on King Street. We are standing on a BART platform in the middle of King Street. This is AT&T Park, or Pac Bell Park, or God knows what it's called now. Oracle Park? I'm not sure. The baseball park that's south of downtown, that's not Candlestick, because Candlestick was too damaged by earthquakes, and so they built this one. But this one's built on top of fill. This used to be a bay called Mission Bay, and now it's a neighborhood called Mission Bay, because they took all of the rubble from the 1906 earthquake, and they dumped it into Mission Bay. And then, like, that's what's underneath this road, that's what's underneath this ballpark. I'm not sure how they were able to seismically secure this thing, but God knows they did. The Niantic, for which Niantic Labs, which makes Pokemon Go, among other things, and Ingress, the sort of prequel / it's the same data version of Pokemon Go that was like the beta version that was not a famous intellectual property. They're named for the Niantic, which was a ship which was like discovered having been buried by the rubble or sunk beforehand and then buried by the rubble. But when they were building new buildings in the neighborhood in like the 1920s or 1930s, they found the Niantic in the ground, kind of underneath the street, which is just an incredible kind of story. And that's the real Pokemon Go, right? That was the first Pokemon for Niantic Labs, was this miraculous ship that disappeared in the mud and then was re-found. So, I absolutely love these kind of shrubbery planters as potential big papercraft, because they're they're rectangular or rectilinear in some form or fashion, right? Like they're definitely they have sides and facets, and so you can make them by folding paper up because they have hinged straight line edges, and that's important for making this into paper. I also like them because they come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes, because they're built out of all kinds of different materials, because they're typically built out of other... They're kind of a secondary use of a building material that's much more commonly used. In this case, you know, these guys are just... These are cast cement planters. And it's really nice, beautiful cement. I mean, I don't know if you can really get detail from this photo, but I certainly can. I can pick out all kinds of really interesting patterns of wear and little pores and granule sizes and things, just by these discolored pixels. And there's also some amount of just like water and kind of street gunk. One thing about San Francisco is that it has all of the sort of problems and worries of a modern global city that's on the Pacific Rim. There's a massive homeless population. There's a massive sort of transient population of like folks who are arriving and leaving from all over the globe, by legal means, by non-legal means, by both, by neither, by whatever, right? Like, it is, the French would call it an entrepot, right? Like a super port, or like a land port. Just a city that's also a trading hub, that's also a place where people live, but it's maybe not, you know, it's not necessarily the capital of its civilization, but it is definitely a place of absolute commerce. And it does not stop at borders, right? It blows borders up. Its job is to make people cross borders and come to it. So, yeah, it hosts a lot of different kinds of people, and it hosts a lot of different kinds of social ills that come from having just a tremendous number of people living there. And as much money gets poured into beautiful masonry and architecture and planters and things, you have to put money into maintenance and upkeep. You have to put money into all of that kind of stuff. That can get weird too, because, I mean, San Francisco is also the place where I first saw, for example, like a security robot. Like, straight up, there weren't security guards patrolling. There was a robot that was like a Roomba, except that it was all it was a Roomba that didn't vacuum anything. It just had closed circuit TV cameras kind of spying as it Roomba'd around the public. And if you got in its way, it would kind of pause, but if you stayed in its way, it would sort of beep at you and be like, "Cat, get out of my way. I have a job to do. I have places to be." And that was not, I didn't like that at all. That felt like it was just a way to harass the public with like cheaper manpower or no manpower. Um, and I think if you want to make demands on other people, you really need to do it in person, and you really have to have an absolutely good reason. Um, and that's the sort of militant pedestrian in me that um, is how it is. Is how I feel, and I don't feel at all ashamed about feeling that way. Um, I feel like it's a better thing to be militant about than religion or um, any other kind of thing. Um, I can be more precise with my language there. Yeah. Getting upset about pedestrian issues is something that affects all of society, regardless of what people's beliefs are or what group they ascribe to. Like, it is a pure civic thing to care about. Everybody's got a body that moves through space and moves through space with like the minimum amount of mechanical power. And everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to amble around their world if they can. You know, if it feels okay to do so. Of course, you want to wander around like you're in your slippers. It's a wonderful feeling to feel at home wherever place you go, especially if it's in the city. A lot of people feel at home deep, deep in the woods, away from people. A lot of people feel at home in like a safe but sort of empty right then in that moment park in the city. But like if you can feel safe on your block, well, yeah, this was this is some public art, which was controversial when it went up and stays controversial now, right? Baby with a handgun in a cop uniform, you know. And it's you can see, right, each one of these is a story. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 8 stories tall. That's incredible. I don't know that we need to draw the cop with the gun, or the baby with a gun. Baby with a handgun, like bip. But yeah, what a striking, amazing mural. A whole side of a building. It's a new building too. Oh yes, where was this? This might blow up our spot. I don't know. Right, San Francisco Unified School District Central. Um, yeah. Yeah, this is like a big building that's that's in downtown San Francisco, which I don't know that it's a school now anymore. I think that it's an administration building now, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's just like shut down at night. Uh, but wow, what a beautiful Beaux-Arts building. You know, totally incredible. We'll go into the detail of it in a second. I gotta think about what to say about um, this vista here. Uh, oh, um, Oh, it's funny actually. Now I'm starting to see this egret as being normal sized and looking down uh, over this, rather than him looking at the egret, because I haven't put anything in between, or like put a, I guess if I put like another, if you could see that there was another cliff wall over on the other side, that might do something, but I don't know that I'm going to do that. Yeah. Oh yeah, okay, but what I will do over here is I do want to give you guys a sense of what the factory floor is like. Right, which is that it's got this grid that just keeps going, you know. And because it has this grid that just keeps going, it's space that can be very conveniently divided up. It's space that they align all of their stuff to it. They build to the grid size, all of it, and then that grid is subtly composed of 5-foot by 5-foot squares, so that it just fits perfectly with Dungeons and Dragons. It's not necessarily that they are aware that they're living inside of a game world. It's more that they are aware that the world that they live in has this kind of like Cartesian snap to grid reality to it, and they have just totally embraced that as like a design principle, and they never try to fight it. And so, like, they just build their stuff in line with the grid and have built their whole civilization around that notion, which makes them very easy to draw, and is actually kind of a compelling secondary idea. Not that they know that they're in a game world, but they know that the physics of the world that they're in have this like board game like regularity to it that is not normal. And they might be aware that it's not normal. The epiphyte fields of the Live Oak Highlands are a dangerous and worthy climb, achieved by intense detail. Oh, right. But when you're up there, you get to look out. Right. Okay, I got it. This cliff is actually wood, right? This is actually the bark. This is like a burl or knot or something. We can show this by showing very gently that this whole thing, right, as coal is wood. It's like the tree. It's like a tree stump or something. It's like a cut branch up here, and that there's a snoot that's on it. This is the top of this. This is like up here, and so the epiphyte fields of the Live Oak Highlands are a dangerous and worthy climb, value achieved by intense detail and perspective. Earned through effort. And great. The epiphyte fields of the Live Oak Highlands are a dangerous and worthy climb, value achieved by intense detail and perspective earned through effort and grit. I like that. I like that a lot. This took about an hour to draw. It's about on track. It took me about an hour to draw this, and I don't know if we looked at this stuff earlier, about an hour to draw this, and then another hour to draw this. So, I've done like 4 hours of solid drawing today, and that is awesome. This stuff is like really compelling. Some of it more than others, but yeah, this is kind of like the sketch process. This is what I think about when I start to think about Dungeons and Dragons stuff. I'm excited to review more of these California photos. I'm so glad that I took them and that I took the time to kind of pick the really good ones. Because, well, you know, I grew up there, and so I recognize a lot of those environments, and they're already resonant with me. And then I have 15 years of artistic reflection, in addition to, you know, from when I was like 20 to now, to think through about what these things meant to me and why I was attracted to the parts of them I was attracted to, and what I felt compelling. I mean, you can see it here, right? Like, this is the factory floor. Here in this coffered ceiling, you can see like a fisheye version of an infinite grid. I love it. You know, that's awesome. And you can see that the shadows of the shadows that are being cast by the light line up with the grid. You know, how cool is that? How cool is that? Right, and that's more about me than about these spaces, but because I kind of have these really early childhood memories of a lot of these spaces, and those memories are what triggered my interest in that kind of work, there's this kind of full circle thing of going back and being re-inspired by the thing that inspired what causes me to get inspired. There we go. Yeah, we got the whole... It's going clockwise, it's going counterclockwise. I'm just rubbing my finger across all of this wet ink, which is, I'm sure, great, and, like, that'll be gross later. Yeah, I'm tired. I think I gotta go take another walk. Yeah, I'm only at 6,000 steps. I took a walk earlier today, but, it wasn't a super long walk, because I just wanted, it was like a 9 a.m., just kind of like, you know, I didn't want to get sweaty, but I wanted to, like, shake up, you know, shake around, get the blood flowing, kind of walk. And I think I need another one of those, and then I'm gonna read, kind of journal into the evening. This sounds good. I don't know how well this Celtic music's working out. I mean, like, I like the shanties, I like the chants, I like the reels, I like the instrumentals, but those are all different subgenres, and I like to know that I'm hopping into one of them and staying with it for a while, and not jumping between them the way that Free Music Archive has these all collated. But, it's free culture, you get what you get, you don't get upset. But I might try to adjust the query terms to be a little bit more specific next time. So, yeah, hey, great experimenting and hanging out on the stream with you guys. It is, wow, 7:08. I'm gonna call it a night, and I hope you guys have great fun, and stay healthy, and socially distant, and good, and have fun. Alright, bye.